What's up, everyone? And welcome to another episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. I am your host, Neil Horwitz. Hit me up on Twitter, NJ287, also on LinkedIn, where I post more content, the website, dsmsports.net, and the podcast is available on whichever podcast platform is your favorite, including YouTube. We got episode number 301 for you guys today, and it's still getting better and better. We're going to do another 300 episodes or more, so I hope you enjoy the podcast today, where we get to delve into an area that I haven't gotten to really to talk about or delve into in the past nearly 12 years of doing this podcast, and that is animation. It's really cool today to see how different organizations in and out of sports are doing cool stuff with animation, really thumb stopping, scroll stopping, attention grabbing, whether it's in venue or in the feed, just really cool stuff and different ways to be able to tell stories through animation, as we'll learn all about today. With today's guest is Greg Walter. He is the owner and creative director of 2Tall. 2Tall Animation. There's a good chance you come across them on social media because, as we'll talk about, their own organic, 2Tall's social media accounts across Instagram, YouTube, TikTok has an impressive following of its own. But you also may have seen their work with some of the great stuff they've done for the Super Bowl participants, the Eagles and the Chiefs. As you can see in my background, the cool stuff they've done with their award-winning stuff with UVA, with the University of Virginia Cavaliers athletics program. We get to hear about where animation fits in for sports organizations and their creative executions, how to build up these animated executions into truly IP and really brand building as well. Just really interesting stuff, and how they think about monetizing their own success. We talk about 2Tall's own success on their TikTok and YouTube and Instagram. Just a really awesome show for you guys today. The process a little bit as well. You learn about what goes into creating these animations. Just can't say enough good stuff. So stick around. Here he is, Greg Walter of 2Tall. Back on the podcast with today's guest, and I'm so psyched to talk to him. I've been intrigued by his business, and the work they put out is second to none ever since we first got connected. And I realized that there was a creative mind behind all this cool content I was seeing. My guest on the podcast today is Greg Walter. He is the founder and creative director of 2Tall. Welcome to the podcast today, Greg.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me on. I've been a big fan of the podcast for a long time, so this is an honor. Really appreciate it.
Hell yeah. Whether you are watching or listening, and whether you know it or not, there is a very good chance you have seen some of 2Tall's work because it's impossible not to see it. It's all over the place. They do work with some of the biggest properties in sports, and even their own channels, as we'll talk about today, go extremely viral because their content's awesome. But before we get to the meat of our discussion, Greg, tell us about you, about your career path, what your stops are along the way, growing 2Tall, and any tips for folks that want to try to work in the space that you do.
Big question. I could go on for 45 minutes about that question alone, but let me give you the main points of it. I was back in the day, I was an art major in college. I got into animation in kind of self-taught in animation. I'm old now, I'm 51, so I got into it in like 1998. I started learning animation. Spent the first 10 years of my career doing like educational kids media stuff like that. Started up Too Tall after I got laid off from my job and I moved to Ohio. And we did mostly educational and kids media animation for like the first 4 or 5 years of Too Tall. And then we made a big switch to sports about 8 years ago and never looked back. And now we do probably 95% of our work in sports.
Wow.
That's the skinny of the journey itself. Uh, the question about how to get into it
Yeah,
is a whole separate question. Should I address that now too?
of course. Yeah.
Okay. So there is no direct route to getting into sports media necessarily. You can actually comment better about generalized sports media. As far as getting into doing art and animation for sports, the most important things you can possibly do is impress people online. And so there is in sports a real sameness after a while to a lot of the content that's being put out there. The people who really stand out to me, and we get a lot of emails from folks who want to do work in sports media. The things that stand out to me are somebody who has a different voice, who's doing something slightly different in sports. Because
Yeah.
the thing about sports is it's got an incredible thirst for innovative content. And the samey stuff is stuff that teams and leagues and networks probably already have a staff that handles. But if you can do something that's a little bit different, really make me think and really make me stop my thumb, that's what makes people like me, people who run teams and creative teams, stand up.
Yeah.
It's somebody who can't just do kind of what their staff can already do, but can excel it and bring an interesting voice to it.
I think that's spot on. And yeah, it's certainly when you're in a creative like role or in the creative space, there's no like when you were first starting out, you in your own job, you didn't have the opportunity to just put everything out there on the internet for the whole world to see necessarily. Those it wasn't as easy to get it out there. Now you if you're creating cool shit, put it out on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and someone will notice it. And so like just do the stuff, put it out there, and that can be a great way to get
Do your
noticed.
stuff. Yeah, get great at your craft. Like Steve Martin said, be so good that they can't ignore you. I think about
Oh
that
yeah.
all the time. Like that was his only bit of advice for making it in a career of comedy. And I think it transports over to this one as well.
Totally. And as we get into it, I kind of want to approach this from a couple different angles. Like first, I want to kind of hear about like why sports? Like what kind of led to that pivot for you guys in animation, and why has sports been it continues to be 95% of what you guys do?
So we got to a inflection point where we could not. We were doing kids media, educational media, some like video explainers, things like that. And what we found was that there was an incredible race to the bottom in all of those areas as far as budgets. As people started farming stuff overseas, our budgets were going down.
Yeah,
We weren't able to get enough money to continue to get better at our craft. And my creative partner and I, Ian Mork, that's very important to us. We don't just want to make a business out of this. We want to be as good as we possibly can be and continue to grow. So we needed an area that we could pivot into that would allow us to do that. We had done one sports job for the Seattle Sounders one time, and we really liked it. But when we were looking at it, we also realized that this is an area like pro sports and sports in general that wasn't really using a lot of 2D animation. So it seemed like there was a niche that we could occupy. There was also, as I was saying before, there is an incredible thirst for innovative, creative content
yeah,
all the time and a lot of competition to be the first to adopt new things. So it seemed like a fertile place for us to grow. And believe it or not, the budgets in sports are a lot better than they ever were in the declining markets that we were already in.
yeah.
So the only problem was we actually only had one piece to leverage. And so we actually kind of shut the studio down for like 3 months and we did passion projects to try to rebuild our portfolio so that teams would take us seriously and might actually hire us on. It took probably about 2 to 3 years to kind of turn us into a studio that was known for sports. But as we were able to like get some teams to hire us and cycle through our portfolio, we gradually started gaining that reputation. So that now that's kind of the first thing that people think of when they come to us. And so we're able to be the first thing on people's minds,
Yeah,
on teams' minds, if they're like, well, hey, we need animation, who do we go to?
yeah.
So that's kind of how we got into it. It's kind of why we got into it. And it actually turned out that strategy worked, which is, rare enough.
Totally. And I mean, I'm sure the word of mouth and the referrals are like kind of happen so organically because someone sees something cool that another team did and they're like, I want that. And before you know it, 2Tall has a bunch of inbound leads probably.
That's the ideal. Yeah. As long as we keep pumping our stuff out there and making sure everyone's aware that we exist, that hopefully once they realize, or if they realize that they would like to do something different than they normally do, we're top of mind and they at least come to us and we can throw around some ideas.
Yeah, and I definitely want to lean into, like double click into that, Greg. I just use the term double click, kind of hate that a little bit, but also don't mind it. Of where animation kind of fits into the picture for a sports organization, for a sports team. Is it that sort of like we want to do something different, and it's like something we want something to stand out for this campaign, for this milestone, for this moment, or we just want something that's unique from what our peers are doing, or is there another like kind of track where it becomes a part of their everyday activity, where animation is just a part of their game presentation, part of their social media design. Like, how do you position animation, and how are sports organizations seeing it as a sort of a part of their creative arsenal?
Great question. It's usually the first, but we're leaning towards trying to grow it into the second. So basically, what most people come to us with is if they've got something coming up. It's a tentpole event. It's something that they want to make a big splash with. The way we think about sports media is 99% of it is photo and footage based, and it should because people want to see their heroes. They want to see the games. But what's the other 1%? And then we feel like we're that. We're the other 1% that somebody might grab onto if they want to do something completely different, or if they want to create some media where they can control it and go anywhere they want to. Because you can go into any storytelling space, you can go into any visual space with animation. So when they have a big tentpole event, or it's a Christmas Eve game, or they want to make a big social media splash with something, anytime they want to stop thumbs or they want to give the fans something different, that's actually a good place to bring us in. What we haven't in the past up until this last year pivoted to is, well, hey, this was a really big hit. How do we then bring this into the rest of your media? How do we create a whole package around this? Like our big animated opener was a big hit with the fans. Let's bring that into the ribbons and the video displays throughout the whole game. Let's bring that to the merch counter. Let's start creating a whole little world around this. And that's what we're starting to build with a few clients now, is getting a foothold with that first social proof that this can be a hit with the fans, because it's different than people normally do. So they're a little nervous. Once it gets a foothold, then we can start kind of expanding, offering the fans a few more ways to interact with the stuff that we're creating.
Yeah. Is the idea that like you're going to really amplify something and like I guess what I'm getting at is like what are sort of the objectives of an organization when they are trying to come to animation? Is like we're going to reach a new audience that normally doesn't notice us, or we're going to engage someone that maybe doesn't pay attention quite as much to the everyday riffraff, or the everyday like hype videos and highlights and sizzle reels, like and so like I guess what are those overarching goals, and also kind of like where does that come from? Is that coming from a creative director? Is it coming from a head of digital strategy? Coming from a head of social, head of marketing? Like how do these things come together to really justify saying let's jump into this animation bucket?
Yeah, usually it's to take the current audience and take them to a new place. Like, it's not necessarily to gain a new audience; it's to double down on what the audience is already excited about. So like especially if we're doing something in venue or we're doing something on social media, what we really want to do is we want to create a piece that looks like it was made by a local for that team, for where the team or the network is right now. And what I mean by that is we'll dig into all the local Easter eggs. We'll have a lot of creative meetings to figure out, okay, where is the team? Who are the heroes? What, and more importantly, who are the fans? What is the culture around the team? And even more importantly, why do these fans love following this team? Besides geography, what about this team do they put their hopes and dreams in, so that
Yeah.
they would stick with this team when they're good, when they're bad? Is it the grit? Is it a blue collar city where it's like the grit and the hard work that's more important? Is it a flashy city where you want to go big and lights and all that stuff? What's drawing the moths to the flame? And then how do we show something interesting and new to this audience to get it even more excited, and to see the team, the city, the franchise in an interesting new way?
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of like strong points to be made there in terms of that like that brand activation. I love the idea, and something you guys do a good job of is all those Easter eggs that like kind of if you know you know, and some of the more esoteric stuff that really plays well, and that you can do in animation that you can't do quite as easily when you are trying to create all these different sets and layups and stuff like that as well. Is that as part of it of like, hey, we can do anything with animation, as opposed to like you have to have a budget to be able to do all this stuff if you try to type it in real life, or is that not really part of the picture? Is it more just like it's the whole package, the look and feel, and it's different, and yes, we can play around a little bit more than we could otherwise, and maybe bring some ideas to life that we couldn't if we had to do this in real life.
Yeah, I mean, so when we figure out what we're going to do with the animation, the two main things are like the budget is a big thing, because animation can be really expensive. It can be fairly reasonable. There's different packages we can do, so we always need to figure out exactly what the fishbowl we have to work in is. But as far as the creative, like, it's all driven by those questions I was referring to before, like style wise and things like that. Especially if a client comes to us and they're like, well, we have a screen that we need to fill. This is the event. We don't know what we want to do with it. Uh, we can go down a creative series of questions with them, like I was talking about before. And from that, we can recommend, well, this is the style, this is the tone, this is the music, this is the journey we could see going on. taking the fans on for this specific venue. And then that kind of determines the style we go with. And we figure out how to fit that style into the budget that they have if we can. So it's a combination of those two things.
And take me through like what the general types of projects are. You've alluded to some of them already. Like we're launching something. It's a brand campaign. Maybe it's a throwback series, or like what are the different things that we see being activated? Like are there things where it is like for a a certain sponsor campaign or a certain hype video? Like what are some of those big picture things that were are getting accomplished through an animation execution?
Most of our stuff we're doing these days, this has been new in the last couple of years, has been in stadium video boards.
Hmm.
So it's mostly like hype videos for like the start of games or for like run ups to the playoff or something like that. This year we're also doing a couple of like the rules videos. Don't get drunk, don't like
Yeah.
some of those things for the boards, or some co-sponsored things for in venue. Early on, we were doing a lot of social media stuff. We haven't been doing as much lately, which is kind of
Interesting.
something that we want to dive back into a little bit more. And we've done a few schedule releases and things like that. But most of our work these days has been on the big video boards.
And part of the reason I ask, like selfishly almost, like is I have this notion that there is opportunity to use animation to bring to life some of this more like otherwise B-roll type audio only executions. Like you have a podcast and it's a great interview, and the player's telling an amazing story. And we've seen some of that. Like I think PGA Tour did some cool animation with some voiceover. I want to say F1 does a good job with their audio and layering on animation to bring it to life. Like, are there different ways to use animation to bring otherwise static or less compelling content to life in a different way?
100%. I need to check out the F1 ones. That's awesome. I didn't know that existed. We've done a bunch of those stuff with the PGA, and we've done some with Monday Night Football with Peyton and Eli, where basically they would give a client would give us a chunk of an interview, and then we would boil it down to like a cool like 1 minute snippet of a story, and then we would animate that. They're on our website. I don't know if the PGA ones are, but that's actually a really great use for animation too, because there's a lot of stuff that there aren't photos and or video footage of, but that are really interesting, and there's only audio snippets.
Yeah.
Can we find a way to bring that to life? And when we do take that audio, like what interesting twists can we put on it to make it more entertaining, more interesting? That's actually a space that we really love working in. We haven't done any of those for the last year. The last one we did, I think, was with yeah, it was I have to remember which one the last one we did, but that's a really fun space for animation.
Hell yeah. No, I mean, every time I'm listening to like an audio only podcast or whatever, and it's like a whatever, an NBA player from the 90s telling us a great story, and it's like this would be ripe to bring it to life in a more compelling and engaging way, and animation can certainly play
Yeah.
a role in that.
It was the Texas Rangers. Sorry, that was the last
Okay.
one we did. That was last summer. Yeah.
Hey, that's
Brain
that
fart.
that was a good one. They were coming off a good run there. Not so much this season, but maybe they'll get back into it. I certainly given that you are portraying athletes oftentimes in these animations, like how is the goal to really do caricatures and like do athletes care about how they're portrayed, or do the teams really take care of that? And also, kind of, well, I want to let you answer that first, and then I'm gonna ask a more loaded question, which I'm want to do.
Great. Yeah, 100%. I mean, the athletes' images are really important to them. They curate them throughout the rest of their career. And when they go into animation, that's something that they also take an interest in. So most of our stuff, if we're working with teams, it goes by the athletes, and they will have comments on it to make sure that they feel like they're being represented uh, to the best of their ability. So we always do try to not flatter, but like, because that sounds pandering, but like represent them in a serious way. Like even if it's a non-serious thing, just like take into account that they do have a public image, that they don't want to look a certain way, and they do want to look a certain way, and take that into account when we're doing it. Just basically take them individually with the same seriousness that we take the brand
Yeah.
when we're going in. And if it looks like it's more of a loose thing, like if it's more of a cartoony thing, and we get a chance to do caricature, we make sure that the caricatures look like them, but aren't like unflatteringly so. And if it's a more serious one, then we just make them look as badass as we possibly can.
Yeah. What tends to be more of the norm in your projects? Do most organizations and teams want that more caricature, like over the top type feel for animation, or do they want that more, serious, not maybe not necessarily photorealistic, but something closer to that?
It depends. It depends on the project. I would say probably 2/3 of the time they want something serious and hype. They want something that the fans can get like really juiced about, not necessarily have a good laugh. So more so, I'd say we do that.
Yeah. Well, I guess it goes back to like the emotion they're trying to convey and how they
Yeah,
want to make fans feel when they're watching it as well.
yeah. The worst thing you can do is take an audience that is there to like feel the energy and feel like they're with a winning team and feel pride for their team and then make them laugh. I mean, it's just not. There's a time and a place, but you when whatever mood that they are in when they see our animation, we want to accelerate that mood. You
Yeah.
know, so if they're there and they're pumped about their team and they're so excited to be there, we want to get them more excited. We want to pour gasoline on the bonfire that already exists. Because if you do the opposite thing, you can actually tamp down the
Some of it.
enthusiasm by doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. But if they're there just like have fun, this is like our social media stuff. People just want to kick back after a game. They want to check out something funny that's like an exclamation point at the end of the game. They want us to laugh. Like in that venue, serving them something serious, they'd probably yawn and move on. So it's just like figuring out where they are emotionally and figuring out how to accelerate the enthusiasm that already exists is part of the process we go through when figuring out what to serve up to fans.
It's a great insight because I think that the oftentimes like for me at least the default is oh it's animation, it's a cartoon, I'm gonna laugh, and something's gonna be like goofy, but there's also animation that can make you want to run through a brick wall like just as much as any sort of cinematic sizzle hype video can as well, which is a cool thing to think about. I alluded to this before, Greg. I was going to ask a more of a loaded question, so get ready. But
I'm
no,
ready.
like when you're concepting out these animated projects, like how much bigger and more comprehensive can they get? Are they getting when it comes to like we are not just developing a one-off thing you're going to show in your venue before kickoff or before tip-off, whatever it is, but this can be a new opportunity for you to have IP that you can activate in several different ways, whether it is through not just partnership activations, but maybe there's a poster series. Maybe you can create merch. I mean, we're talking right now, not to date this podcast too much, but Labubu dolls are everywhere, however you pronounce that. Like, could we create like plush dolls of these animated players that we can sell to kids or sell our merch for? Like how what is like the full 360-degree activation of this animated IP look like?
Well, it's kind of what I talked about before. Like we started out with a foothold, like we need to hook the fans first because you put all this stuff out at the same time and you realize they're not connecting with it,
Yeah,
then you put out too much out there. But if
totally.
you put out one thing, like for instance, what we're doing at University of Virginia, we did a revamp of their opening video before their football games with a new version of the Cavalier that's darker and more sinister and more noir. And we weren't sure if the fans were going to connect to it because their typical Cavalier is kind of a jolly musketeer.
Mhm.
But what we found and what they found locally is that it was a big hit kind of across the board. Like people really liked the world that we took the Cavalier into. So now what we want to do is we want to say, okay, will they do this? Will they do X? Will they accept X? Can we expand this in an organic way so that he becomes part of the UVA community? So we're having talks with them about that. More and more as we approach teams and we're creating videos for them, we're also packaging up still assets for them. And we're writing into the contract, we'll also get you some still assets you can use or some looping assets that you can use on your boards any way you want or in your merch. And you can cross purpose this stuff.
Yeah.
So you're not paying for something that's going to show once or even once before each game. You're paying for a package of other things that you can then give to your video team, to your merch team, and then they can recompile them in interesting ways. And then that gives them the power to not have to come to us over and over again and say, hey, can we get this stuff? They can experiment a little bit on their own and see what's working. And then if that's enough for what they need, great. If they need some custom stuff, they can always come back. So if it springs out in an organic way, I think it has a lot more of a lasting foothold and a lot more value than if we try to say, let's do a million things on one day and
Right.
drop it all at once.
No, I love that explanation, and it really is like if this is taking off, like how can we throw gasoline on this fire? How can we,
Yeah.
monetize it in more unique ways? How can we bring it to more channels and bring it to more venues, or more mediums rather as well, which is super exciting. And the more I hear you like discussing this, the more I'm understanding that this is not just certainly not just a social media play, even not just an in-venue play, but now I'm hearing like, okay, you're talking to not just the creative people, the digital and social people, probably the marketing people, the event presentation or game presentation people, game ops, and also the brand. Like when you are doing something like the UVA example you just brought up, like that's truly brand marketing and brand act and brand management. And so, like, are you guys sitting down with the people that are, crafting the brand? And it's certainly when they're doing a rebrand, of saying like, this is how we have been seen, this is how we want to be seen, and
Mhm.
what you guys are going to produce at Too Tall is going to be the anchor piece to really buttress this rebrand.
Yeah, so there are ladders to all these things. There are hierarchies at all these organizations. Sometimes we, and this addresses a question you asked earlier too. Sometimes we are hired by the person who oversees all creative, social, and digital and marketing and stuff like that. If we're doing that, then they have kind of their eyes on the whole thing, and they may be plotting that stuff out from the get go. If we start off working with somebody who's just handling, say for instance, college hoops, and they're just in charge of college hoops social, at that point it can work its way up to other departments, but it takes a little bit more time. People have to kind of notice from a distance, and then once it gets up to the person who is kind of overseeing the entire thing, then we might have those other departments getting involved, start bringing a few more people to meetings to just start throwing around ideas.
Yeah. And I hope like generally people can come in and appreciate what your work can do. And it's not just like, yes, it's going to be a neat little animation we're going to show on the video board during games, but if we take this as a true piece that we can really not just repurpose it, but use it in strategic ways across the board, which is super exciting to think about.
Yeah,
And
that's the ideal. It's fun to the times where we feel like we've made an actual indelible mark on a brand, contributor diverse that's got echoes throughout the brand. That's the most satisfying thing we ever can do.
oh yeah. I'm gonna ask like I'm sure the eternal question that everyone always will want to know or want to get insight into is how do you know what's hitting, what's working? I mean, yes, when you put something out on social, you'll get some feedback from engagement metrics and whatnot, but especially when it's not on social or even beyond social as well, of like this is hitting the right way, or fans are getting it. And more of those like qualitative metrics and sentimentality and things of that nature. And of course, like the ROI of like we paid too tall and we feel like we got more than the value we paid for. Like, what are the ways that you're seeing clients appreciate and understand the value and ROI of these things, and how are you guys thinking about sort of the ways to measure success?
It's a great question. And it's a tricky area because, like, social, you can kind of measure it a little bit. You can see engagement, you can see interactions, you can see how it's comments, things like that, and how it's and benchmark it against other posts. If it's in stadium, it's tricky. So we always sit down with the client afterwards, after our projects, and we ask them, how has this experience been? Did this fit in with what you guys wanted it to do? How did the fans react to this? It's less quantitative and more qualitative assessment that we do with the teams themselves. And would you come back? And if they do come back and they do more, do you want to do more of the same? Is that hitting? Do you want to try something slightly different? So the measurables are a bit trickier than they would be if we were working in commerce, where you can say, oh yeah, sales went up,
Right.
that's an easy number. You can't measure, did the audience get a little bit louder when they saw this thing. I will say that, like, we did a couple things for the Super Bowl this year. We did one for the Chiefs, which played, or we did one for the Eagles and one for the Chiefs. The one for the Eagles played when the Eagles were just like really at their peak, and the crowd went wild for it. The one of the Chiefs unfortunately played right as the crowd started realizing that this one was really getting out of hand, and it was a dead room apparently. So
Oh
it's
man.
little bits of data like that we can go on. You can't control how the Super Bowl is going to go when you're creating something for it. But we ask those questions. We're like, so how did this play? Did you notice? And did you notice this? We look on social media for live events to see if anybody is recording that on their phone, and you can hear what people are saying around them, hear what they're saying, little things like that, little breadcrumbs. But we don't have a big data sheet that we can look at from most of the in stadium stuff that we do.
Yeah, no, it's definitely part art and part science, and it really is like those anecdotal stories and just looking around the stadium as well, saying who's looking at the screen now? Are they and were they not looking at the screen before this came on? And are they are they experiencing the emotion that this is intended to have them amplified and experience as well? Like it's important. It's honestly as important as any data you can find as well. Is how are we making fans feel? Because that's going to make someone a fan for life if you get them to get the heartstrings a little bit more and not just a quick little smile here and there or stealing attention for a few seconds.
You want to get an emotional response. There's a lot of emotional responses you can get. You want to figure out which one you want, and you want to get that one. That's the goal, and it's just hard to quantify that. But
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's it's as you say, it's a bit of art, it's a bit of science.
Having a great conversation here with Greg Walter. He is the founder and creative director for Too Tall. I want to kind of hear about like how like there's you can look across the board at animation and you see so many different styles. Like certainly anime has its unique style.
Yeah.
Studio Ghibli went viral a few months ago with ChatGPT or all the Gen AI tools. Like does Too Tall have a style, or is there a menu of like this is one way we can portray this is another way, this is another way, this is another way? Is there a certain point where you have to really say these are the like the four or five six styles that we have that we're really good at how do you go tweak that along the way with your clients as well, and so yeah, how have you kind of honed your style, how much variance can there be, and how do you go about kind of making sure it's going to fit what you guys want?
Yeah, there are a lot of styles within animation. One of the main misconceptions about when people think of animation, they think cartoons or they think anime. Like there's a few lanes that animation typically falls into for people. So like cartoony is one lane that people like are really comfortable in and they may expect to see. Anime is one of those things. We have a bunch of different styles we work in. Sometimes it makes sense to drive straight into someone's lane and do something interesting in their lane. Like for instance, our stuff on social media, we wanted people to get into that cartoon, old school cartoon kind of Peanuts lane, and then we can do something interesting to surprise them once their expectations were set by the lane that they were in. MLS came to us and wanted to do something last year that was anime. Our internal team doesn't do anime, but we have a really broad list of contractors we work with that can really do any custom style. And so we did an anime hit for them and brought in references from all sorts of different anime places. You set the tone, people know where they are, and then there's certain things you expect to see, and you can be surprised and delighted by the things we put in there. What we really like to do, we like to create new lanes. Like if you see something that it feels like you haven't seen before,
Yeah.
then you're more likely to sit and watch through it just to see what happens. And so we've been drawing a lot from, for our more serious ones, from graphic novel, street art, different fine art, different disciplines that we can bring into the communications from teams that will surprise people and show them something they haven't seen before. So there's kind of a choice point. Do I want to go into a lane that people already know and work within that? Or do I want to use animation that can be anything? You can go collage, you can go rotoscope animation, which is traced animation. You can do trippy, you can do photorealistic, you can do graphic novel, you can do street art, you can do a whole bunch of different things. What satisfies the assignment the best?
Yeah.
What like if you want to do street art, is there a materiality? There's a materiality about street art. You expect pavement, you expect walls. There's a tangibility to it that we can work with to give something that's got kind of a solid feel where your feet are on the ground and you feel like you're at ground level. Or we can do something crazy and trippy that's got lots of colors and it's out in space.
Yeah.
That's a really weird answer to your
No,
very
it's the
question,
science of it. I
but
love it.
yeah, so we've got lanes in animation and we're trying to create new lanes, but as soon as that lane gets too comfortable, we try to, even if somebody comes to us for that thing that we've done a million times, we always try and find a different way to differentiate this client's work from the other clients to make sure that their brand has its own kind of custom style that they then can continue with, that doesn't quite look like this other one, even if that's exactly what they requested.
Yeah, and so in that sense, and just sort of the brand tend to dictate the style as opposed to like what the objective of the content is. Like this type of animation is best for making fans feel nostalgic and like in touchy feely. This style is better to make fans feel really like motivated and cheering and like intense. Or is it more like let's have the brand foundation first, and then we can make some tweaks along with maybe it's the music or the the copy and things like that that can really influence the feel of it.
Yeah, 100%. Sometimes people come to us with a fully formed idea, in which case we will give our creative they give us a fishbowl, and we'll give our creative opinions within the fishbowl that they would like us to do. But if somebody comes to us with kind of a blank slate saying, here we are, we want something, then we'll go through that entire process and we'll try and figure out what do we think, what do we want to suggest to them to do, and they can decide to do it or not. But those are kind of the two ones. If we're left to our own devices, we go through a whole process. The discovery that we find in that process is what determines everything that you see on the screen. Otherwise, we'll just kind of execute to the best of our abilities the thing that they know that they already want because they've had those discussions internally.
Yeah. Yeah, and something that was going through my mind too as you were describing like different styles of animation is I forget the exact terminology to use, but like the familiar but just slightly new, like new but
Yeah.
familiar, or whatever the term is, and you can lean
Yeah.
into those things that like that feel familiar enough, but also have a little bit of newness that are novel but familiar. Forget again, there's a term for it that I'm forgetting. But there's something to that of like I recognize this, but there's something like you cool about it and unique and something I haven't seen before. And then when you think about like some of the nostalgic styles you were talking about, like the peanut style of some of the social media stuff you guys do, like there's a lot of like nostalgia to that, but then
Mhm.
presenting it in new ways or surprising, delighting when you're taken back to that nostalgia feel just in time to punch you over the head with something that you haven't seen before, which is kind of unique as well.
Yeah, it's a dance. I mean, you're dancing with the with the fans, with the audience. You're Fred Astaire and their Ginger Rogers. You're leading them through this thing, and it's got familiar steps, but every once in a while you can throw in curveballs to make sure it's interesting, it doesn't get stale. But it's important. There's a structure there, and you realize the structure, what preconceptions people are coming into this with, what they're already bringing into this conversation, so that you can like really lead them properly. One thing is you like this is you're really leading an audience when you create any media. Like you want to tell them very clearly where their eyes should go,
Yeah.
what journey you want to take them on. It's more comfortable to somebody if the person creating media for them, whether it's documentaries or it's game day broadcasts or it's animation or whatever, you lead them on an interesting journey. People really appreciate that when it's got kind of a confident, steady hand to it. So we try to do that as well. Take into like what journey they want to go on, but then let them kick back and just go on a journey with us.
Yeah, I love the thoughtfulness of everything. It's like is uh, it might sound highfalutin, but like every frame is kind of like almost treated like a piece of art. Like there's a composition to every frame. Something we want fans to where we want them to look for this in this frame. We something we want them to feel during this frame. Like in that sense, because it's a good kind of segue to something I want to talk about next, which kind of blows up this question a little bit of like where the future of the space is going and like the world of Gen AI. Like in my mind, that like we how far off can we be from just me telling ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity or whatever, create an animation that does this, make it in the style of 2Tall even of this 2Tall video, use this as inspiration.
Yeah,
Like how much does Gen AI affect the work that you guys can do day to day, both in terms of scaling your creativity and how much does it fall short today, and how much would always fall short or will not?
it's a great question because every month I'm like, oh yeah, but it can't do X. Only creatives can do X. And then the next month I'm like, oh no, it figured it out. The problem is like, if you look at like music, if you look at creative things, there's math to all that stuff. Like the best
Yeah,
musicians are also mathematicians. The best
totally.
there is math to storytelling, to story creation. There are cycles to it. Talking about leading people, like there are specific structures to all the movies and the genres that you go and you see in movies. They are diagrammable, and so they are studyable and they are replicable. So it's a really tricky thing because like when every time I'm like, oh yeah, creatives will always be able to control this because of X, then the machine learns a new thing. The machine so far can only learn and spit out. It can't right now it can't go through that process. It can't go through that full creative process where you talk to the team and you figure out where the fans are, all that, and really hone something to that. It might be able to soon. So the thing that I think might be the determining factor, and this is just spitballing, is that like at a certain point, once anything can be done with a prompt, it's going to cheapen everything that we see.
Yeah.
And so at that point, the creatives of the world, what we need to do is we just need to stay ahead of it. Like every time it drives a new market, drives a market that we're already doing down, figure out what the next thing is and be the leader on that thing. And then at some point, it's going to learn from that and it's going to drive that market down. But it's like you need to stay on the crest of the wave in a crazy way that you never had used to. So I think it's going to keep us on our toes because the amount that you can do without any artistic training, without any storytelling training, without any writing training these days, you're jumping so far forward. You're jumping forward, but with no knowledge of the craft inside it. There's a certain level of knowledge, of wisdom you get if you've gone through all the reps of the craft over the years.
Yeah.
But you can't just sit on that. I think you need to take all those years and all those reps, and you need to use those to continue to innovate ahead of everybody else. The thing that I find, like, I'm old, I'm 51, but like most people we work with are young. I go to Skull Sparks and everybody there is like, 20s and 30s. I know that I have so much potential to be a dinosaur if I wait and I stall for 1 second on trying to get ahead of what's happening in media today.
Yeah.
I think that's the hunger you have to have, or else in 5 years you might wake up and you might be surrounded by robots and they can all do what you're doing for a tenth of the price. And honestly, it looks a little bit better.
Yeah.
Long answer, but that's kind of my general theory of not what we have to of what it looks like, but like what I think creatives have to do. You can't just be a craftsperson anymore. You can't just be really good at drawing necessarily. You have to use your creative muscles to really be a creative director, to be somebody putting new innovations into the market and not resting on old innovations.
No,
It
really
was a
well
long answer.
said.
Sorry about that. I had to
No,
get to that
I
somehow.
appreciate that. That's exactly what I want. I want to dive into this stuff, and like if you think it's really at the end of the day, like all art, and this might be a hot take, and I'm using hyperbole purposefully, is derivative. Like nothing is ever like, everything builds upon itself, and if we just hand over the keys to Gen AI, then everything's going to be derivative forever, and nothing's going to build on that necessarily. And so it's like, okay, we can recreate the styles of yesteryear, but how are you innovating and moving beyond yesteryear, moving beyond the remixes of yesteryear to some degree? I kind of want to get your insight from having been in the space for 20, 25 years now. Like how have you seen animation evolve and change over the years, and like what are the areas, what are the variables and things that are still left to innovate on? Like where are the opportunities to change things, whether it's just styles or the way that animation's presented, or like where's innovation going to come from? Where has it come from?
Man, that's a big question. So I think that there is an incredible creative churn. So like there are phases that go, like I was just talking about, there are phases that there's bubbles that pop. There are phases that become really popular, and then there's a race to the bottom as people figure that out, and then churn on to the next thing and on to the next thing and on to the next thing. There have been a whole bunch of iterations of things that have been successful, have been overused, and have
Yeah,
died.
yeah,
So that's kind of like style wise, it's a cyclical process over and over again. I'd almost say I don't know if it's really necessarily grown. It's just churned a lot. It's like there's people always want to see something interesting and new and recombined versions of what was there before. So I've just seen so many different styles kind of come and go. As far as the technology goes, there's been a huge move towards doing stuff in 3D, and part of that huge move has actually left a big open space for us to maintain our foothold in 2D because so many people have raced to 3D. Now that's become the norm, and there's an area for us to operate in there. So it's this malleable thing that has kind of changed back and forth over the years. It's really dictated a ton by people's real need for surprise and novelty, especially on social media. Social media is People's relationship with social media is very problematic, but it exists, and we are existing to create content for that. And people are comfortable with the thing that they like to go on and slide through.
Hmm.
But I think people are hungry for that thing to be surprised.
Totally.
And anytime that you can give somebody a good surprise, there's bad surprises too, but a good surprise, that's a little victory. And then that's like a breadcrumb that can lead to other things as well. And that's kind of how a lot of this churn happens. It's like somebody does something interesting, and then someone else sees it and they're like, huh, I can take that a little bit further. And then it churns into something bigger. It's almost like I was saying, like stay on the crest of the wave. It's very much like that. It's like figuring out what people are doing, what's working, and staying on the crest of that wave is the only way to kind of stay above this churn.
And so, in that sense, do you have to almost be like a super consumer, or have people internally be super consumers of this content? Because, like, how do you get that instinctual feel of like, this like we're reaching the crest, or we're reaching the point where we like this is getting to be commoditized.
Yeah. I, to a degree, I may have painted myself into a corner because I actually don't do a lot of social media on my own. Like I I I don't necessarily stay on top of the micro trends because those are, Hawk 2 is great for a while.
Yeah,
I don't even care about that. That's a 3 month cycle. Like I care about like the longer cycles, like and I care about finding ways to create surprise on an individual basis on any given interaction online. And then once I find a way that to do that, then we can kind of learn from our own data of what we're doing, not necessarily staying on top of like what song is trending on TikTok, anything like that.
right,
I'm never going to be able to keep up
right.
with the 20-year-olds and the teens on that. We'll always lose at that. But if we can kind of create our own content and learn by what people, if we can create content that's interesting and different, possibly because we don't even know what's going on a day-to-day basis, and we can kind of study what people are responding to, we can figure out how to keep growing that audience and how to keep surprising that audience over a long period of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I'm thinking about even just like keeping abreast of what styles are really prevailing, and is a certain style getting really saturated, and therefore like
Yeah.
there's an opportunity to play in a different sandbox, or I innovate alongside some things. Just a few more minutes left here. The Greg Walter versus the shareable stat. I'm trying to figure out which questions I want to run through because there's so many more that we can talk about. I did want to touch briefly on how you're seeing your clients and teams monetizes content directly. I imagine sponsor integration or sponsored content is probably the most common. Is that a part of the picture, or is that more of just like more of the more rare than it is otherwise? What are other ways you're seeing monetization take place? How are partners being integrated? Is it just a bug on the screen? Are you guys animating brand logos in some cases or products in some cases? Like what are the sort of the trends you're seeing play out?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff that we do for social media is with teams is co-branded with a sponsor. It's the way things get done, and it's the way that they can get the budget to do interesting stuff. So anytime that we have a sponsor on it, we take that sponsor very seriously. We want to make sure that they feel good about the way they're being represented, all that stuff, because they are enabling us to do good work. Then we need to say thank you to them for that. What I want to learn more about this subject, especially because on the college level, there is a huge need to fill that gap because more and more internal teams are going towards creating NIL content. more internal teams are getting some funding taken away because they need to save some of that money to pay athletes. And so there is a bigger need for creating sponsored content. And it can't just be sponsored content that's going to go up there and 200 people are going to look at it and move on.
Mhm.
It's going to need to be good. And it's going to need to be something that the fans see as a destination in order for it to be of great value to a sponsor to spend a lot of money doing it. Those are the conversations I want to have. Like, can we do something like what we've done on our social media for a team with a sponsor and create content that fans will see as a destination? They'll actually go to the
Yeah.
social media after a game specifically to see that. It's not just a passive thing, it's a destination. So I think if we can have some more of those conversations and we can create some properties like that are really well thought through. It's not just the same content or combinations of photos and videos, but something unique and really interesting and surprising that we can really grow their ability to say to sponsors, this actually has a lot of value for you. We're not just phoning this in. We're creating a real property around your brand. Those are the conversations I want to have.
Yeah, and to the point of what we've been talking about a lot here is you can get very scientific with this stuff, and you can understand this is the way that this partner, the sponsor, wants their fans to feel about their brand, and we know how to create that emotion, and we know how to portray that through our animation, and that can you can really get truly in the weeds on what we're trying to accomplish here, not just from an ROI perspective, but truly from a feel perspective and an emotional investment perspective, engagement perspective. Love that.
Yeah.
And you alluded to it, Greg. I definitely want to talk about and ask about it. If anyone can go on Too Tall on their TikTok right now or on their Instagram or any of their social channels and see the massive success you guys have on there, just incredible reach and engagement. The content's phenomenal. You're on top of both current events, oftentimes with like NBA storylines and whatnot. So I guess just a was this expected or was it just like you posted a couple of examples of content on Too Tall one day and it's like holy shit we just got 1 million views like what the hell and then what does the opportunity represent like is there opportunity to get payments from the platforms or to sponsor your own content, is it just a marketing vehicle at that point for your content? So how to start and then what can you do with all that success?
Great. A lot of questions in there. So as far as like, did we intend to do this? No, we had some downtime and we wanted it and we thought this would be funny. And we did it a while ago. We did the entire NBA playoffs as like one animation like 5 years ago because we had some downtime. And we put it out there and no one really watched it. I didn't even remember putting it on YouTube Shorts, but like 2 years later, my son texted me from school and he's like, "Hey, you need to look at your YouTube." And I looked at it and it had like 4 million views and like 1,000 comments that were all 2 years old. I had no idea,
Wow.
but people really liked it, and so we decided to try an experiment. When we had some downtime around April again, we decided we were going to try and do the exact same thing, but we were going to drop them the second that the game ended. As soon as the buzzer goes off, we drop an animation. So that means we have to have multiple animations sometimes ready. But it was going to be more work, but we wanted to see what would happen. And what happened is it really took off. And word of mouth grew around it so that people started seeing that as a destination. And so when we saw that, we were like, well, where can we take this? And so we did it the second year to see if it was replicable. And it did even better. We weren't even going to do it this year because we were really busy with client work. And I was like, we don't have time to do it this year. And we hadn't figured out a way to really monetize it yet. But the fan reaction to it when we announced we weren't going to do it, I was like, people were so disappointed that I was like, okay, let's find a way to do it. So I spent my nights and weekends working on it, and so we were able to do it again. As far as monetizing it or making it worth a real ROI, um, it gives us ROI because it expands our ability to get our other content out to people. Like we just have a huge audience we can mobilize now. It's been really good for business just in general in getting client work in. That's an ROI. We've started a Patreon this year, and it was pretty successful for the first year. We're going to test that out. We've got, I don't know, a couple hundred paying members. That's something we're trying out. We're also trying to really study we've been tweaking knobs on this every year. We've been doing things differently. We've been trying different ways of uh, sending the same fans on a different journey. And each time we're recording the success of those things, we're tweaking knobs on this thing. We're gathering data with people like Dan Marazza. We're starting to study it,
Yeah.
and we are now able to present use cases. Like, this is what does and does not work. This is what's really replicable for another platform that we could do. It doesn't have to be exact. It's not the exact same thing, but this format we're doing is replicable, and we can do this with you on your platform. So
Yeah.
we've got a case studies, and now we can start shopping around those case studies with other folks who have a real ROI with their contents and have sponsors on there and stuff like that. So we are getting all those things out of it. We are also looking at expanding into the into football as well.
Mhm.
I don't say NFL because we insulate ourselves. We try and insulate ourselves as much as possible from really feeling like we're standing on anybody else's territory. We don't use any logos. We don't use team names. We don't use player names in our animations. We use likenesses, but we don't do any of that stuff because we really want to make sure that no one feels ill done by
Right.
what we're doing. And so we keep we run everything we do by legal. We make sure that we are on really good footing to make sure we're taking the really great next steps. But we are working our way into some new content for football to see how that lands with fans. It's going to be a different sort of content. We're going to see how they gravitate to it. And if they do or they don't, that's just kind of more tweaking the knobs and figuring out what audiences will and won't respond to. So I guess in short, it's a great for our exposure,
Yeah.
a great petri dish for really learning how to do this over multi years, and got some revenue coming in through YouTube, some monetization, some Patreon money. And also the fourth thing I didn't allude to at all is it's a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I don't want to discount that because when you have creative freedom and you have a fan base our fan base has been amazing. Like they haven't gone trolly on us yet at all. Like they're pretty cool. You've got total creative freedom and you've got a fan base that just absolutely loves it. Um, it's invigorating for me. It keeps me going through the rest of the year of client work, which I love, but it can be a grind when I know I can look forward to just getting silly, getting
Oh yeah.
weird, like all that stuff. So all
Love
those things we get out of it.
Yeah, no, it's tremendous, and as you mentioned, it's like a free focus group. If your focus group was millions,
Yeah.
you can learn what's working, make like you said, like make tweaks and test hypotheses, and I mean the sky's the limit. I mean, you mentioned going to football. Who knows? Like the soccer world, you could create different
Yeah.
tall vertical accounts, for different sports, different leagues, different countries. You and I will have to talk after this because I have lots of ideas. The wheels are certainly spinning, and it's cool to see what you guys have already accomplished. And like I said, if you're listening to this and have not seen 2Tall's social accounts, go check it out, and you'll see why they do so well and get such great engagement because it's really cool stuff. And in that
Appreciate
sense
it.
too, and just one last thing before we get to the shareable stat, like what are those things that really do tend to move the needle? Both and like are there things that you find affect a sports fan different than someone who's not a sports fan? Or I guess more so along the lines of like what's the secret sauces that you guys have learned? And without giving away too much of the secret sauce, like what drives the success of a two-tool animation versus a generic one or something that works really well on your guys' own platforms or even on client platforms versus not. Like what are those things that teach me because I don't know.
Yeah. So what we found is like for TikTok, Instagram specifically, really short content. These are 8 seconds long, generally speaking. The longer ones we do actually get less engagement.
Interesting.
Like 8 seconds, there's a format we do. So we're actually reporting the news on these. We're reporting the progression of the playoffs because we create a board state with all the teams left. We show which team is eliminated, and we create the board state afterwards. And basically, what we kind of stumbled into was a more creative way to report how the playoffs are going. That's all that we're really doing, but we're doing it in a package where you don't realize that's what is getting to reported to you. So very short, uh, very relevant because you're charting the playoffs.
Yeah.
Very timely is incredibly important. That's the only reason this took off, because generally what you see at the end of a game is maybe a picture and a score. That's what people have time to do.
Right.
Like, this is a fully formed animation that reacts to the end of a game that's dropped right at the end of the game. People were very surprised to see that over the first couple of years. And they were like, before they realized that we made these in advance, they were like, how did you even do this? The game just ended. And so the timeliness is absolutely crucial. If we put it up, like, if we had a glitch and put it up 10 minutes later, it would hit our stats quite a bit.
Right.
Timeliness, relevance, surprise, and consistency. Like, every single elimination game this is going to come out. If we didn't drop one, we would hear it. That's when people might get upset about it, get trolly about it, because we have not disappointed the fans yet. The
Yeah.
consistency, they know that this is going to happen every single time. So I would say those things have all worked in our favor. There's
Yeah.
a few other things that are a little bit more proprietary that I kind of want to keep in the bunker a little bit longer, so they can marinate for our own systems.
Yeah. And what do you make of like I think of Bleacher Report and having like their Game of Thrones type stuff, or like the ways that they present like Champions League soccer, or the way they present NBA storylines. Like, is that a trend that you see, an opportunity that, like, why aren't more people doing what BR is doing in terms of creating this like more serialized animated stories that can be kind of memeified or mematic a little bit, and kind of savage a little bit. Like, is that something that you guys think should be bigger, or is that a bigger undertaking than people realize?
I mean, the main reason I think is that it just is, animation is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Um, and staying on top of trends with something that takes a lot of time is pretty hard. Like, because often, like, if you're reacting to what's happening in the news, it might be 2 weeks later that you actually get your animation out there. So it's really hard. I think like Game of Zones did an amazing job of kind of charting out, like, did I say Game of Zones? Kind of charting out in this alternate reality the trends of the NBA without even quite knowing them yet, but just kind of the most logical things that could happen. But they're in a fantasy world, so they don't quite happen. It still works, if
Yeah.
that makes some sense.
Totally.
So
Totally.
it's tricky storytelling wise. Um, Telling really good stories that people want to see, there's no easy button for it. It's a tricky thing to do. Game of Zones was just brilliantly done in my opinion. So it's hard to do. It can be pretty expensive. If you do it cheaply, no one will watch.
Yeah.
Um, and staying on top of trends is really difficult with a medium that you can't just knock out with an overnighter.
Totally. No, I like the way this is coming full circle. Most of, like, this stuff is hard, but when it's done well, it can really hit, and it can really have a lot of lasting value for as fans consume it. And it's just so cool to like learning, going deep into learning about animation, learning about the strategy behind it, why it's so successful in sports, and why and how Too Tall is really driving a lot of that success. But Greg, we'll have some more fun with your quick hitters. About first episode shareable stat coming up right now. Really enjoyed being able to talk to Greg Walter. Always enjoy talking to him. We've been able to keep in touch a bit as I've gotten to know him recently, and just really interesting stuff. Lots of good insights, and had my wheels spinning quite a bit. But stick around because we'll have more fun with Greg and with our quick hitting questions segment. But first, this episode's shareable stat. And for this episode's shareable stat, I want to keep it in the family, so to speak. We're talking with Too Tall today. We talked about a lot about their process, and this shareable stat is 86. I counted, so you don't have to. That is the number of videos currently, as of this recording, on Too Tall Animation's TikTok that has over 1 million plays. And of course, that's not the only places you'll find their own content. You'll see it on YouTube and Instagram as well, where it posts. It also garners a ton of engagement and viewership. But I wanted to point to TikTok because it's an easy number to come up with, and really just speaks to some of the stuff that we talked about in the interview. And you'll hear more about it in the quick hitting question segment about what goes into these executions on Too Tall's own platforms, and really why, as you heard Greg talk about it, why it's so successful. And he talked about the timeliness factor of it, the relevance factor of it, and sort of the ability to be ready at the moment's notice. As soon as those playoff games end in the NBA, as we talked about, they are ready to go. And fans are flabbergasted. How did you have this ready to go so quickly? And Greg talks about how you do as much as you can and have it ready to go so that you can put it out there. You can hit that timeliness factor. In the sports world, I'm sure people have experience working within within drafts, having to be ready to go within seconds or within minutes of a draft pick being made when you don't necessarily know who it's going to be. Being ready for big moments as well and anticipating what could happen, what will happen, doing the 95% that you do know so that you can do that last 5% as quickly as possible. And it's really interesting to think about how can you prepare for all these different moments. And we see that across the board in sports and social, whether it's the team side, the league side. I've often on my own personal social feed touted Bleacher Report being really good at this, having that sort of whether it's evergreen content or evergreen plus one. Maybe it's where it's evergreen except you add one little element, maybe the opponent logo or the final score or whatever it might be. How can you prepare all these like near evergreen elements that can be really cool and really eye-catching, really attention-grabbing that can look like they've taken hours of work because oftentimes they have and are somehow ready at the moment's notice for so when the moment hits, you are ready to maximize that engagement, maximize that interaction with that content across your social feeds. A lot to think about there. I'm not a creative talent myself, but certainly have known and come across quite a bit and been lucky enough to interview several on this podcast over the years. And it was really cool to hear the process for Greg and for 2Tall in these creative executions for around the NBA playoffs in particular. And it certainly pays off because if you go and visit their 2Tall at 2Tall Animation across Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, etc., you will see how cool it is, how well done it is, and how much incredible engagement that it truly garners. So that's it for Turbo Stat. Think about it, talk about it, ponder it, take action on it, and more importantly, stick around for more with Greg Walter of 2Tall Animation. Back in this episode of Shareable Stat, and I'm joined once again by Greg Walter. He is the founder and creative director of 2Tall. Greg, you schooled us on all things animation, learned a lot, enjoyed it. Are you now ready for some quick hitters?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. Number one. This would probably be. I'm interested to hear the answer to this question. Tell us about where the name Too Tall came from. That's two, the number two, and the word tall, all one word. Where does Too Tall come from?
So the main reason I started using the name 2Tall is because I was going to a lot of networking events originally, and what I wanted was I wanted something that was memorable if you met me in person. And I'm 6'4", 6'5", somewhere around there, so I'm a relatively tall guy, and also something that had a little bit of interest to it and was short.
Mhm.
So I liked Too Tall with TOO, but I decided to just like throw the number in there just because I thought it would be shorter and more interesting. There's really not much else besides that, but I will say this is a really quick story. I used to go to networking events. I had this name and I wanted people to remember meeting me. And so I am actually already pretty tall. I would wear these dumbass cowboy boots that would like make me like 2.5 inches taller because if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna double down and I'm gonna make sure that you either remember me for the name, how tall I am, or these dumbass cowboy boots that I'm wearing to this random networking event. So it
That
all
is
kind of worked in with that
incredible.
name.
Oh man, a 6'4" guy who's making himself even taller. I am a 5'6", 5'7" on my best days, and I am jealous as hell that and you're making yourself taller. But it speaks to some of your philosophies too around like how can you stand out? How can you be something different? And
Yeah.
that's what Too Tall allows you guys to do. Number two, you guys have won some awards. Not surprising. It's awesome work. Tell us about the awards that you won, and tell us about one of the projects in particular that you want to shout out that won an award.
Okay. Yeah. So we generally aren't awards chasers big time. We've started applying to some awards in the last couple of years. We did get nominated for a national Emmy this year, which is something that I've always wanted. And having gone to the ceremony in New York, I wanted even more. That thing is so freaking shiny up on that stage. I wanted to get up there. So we got the Emmy nomination. We got a Clio last year for our work with UVA. That one is and we've got a bunch of other American Advertising Association awards and things like that, and we're nominated for another Emmy this year in for some of our work with Kansas City. The UVA project is one of the favorite projects that I've ever worked on in my life. We had a this is the one that won a Clio, and we'll be doing it again this year, and so I'm hoping that we can submit it again with the new variations. This project it was a really fun one because we did a 50-second animation for their open, but there are 35 seconds of that is the same every time. 15 seconds of that is just a full-on fight scene between the Cavalier and the mascot of the other team. And so every week, for every home game, the fans get to see this opening, and then there's a novel bit of it every single time.
Yeah.
It's a really fun creative space because we take like if it's the Terrapins of Maryland, we can make him like a gigantic, like Godzilla size
Yeah.
dude. We can, and we've really gone into kind of a horror noir kind of look with it. This has been super fun. It's one of my favorite projects we've done of all time. We're continuing to work with them, and that is top three projects of all time as far as just like how much I've enjoyed it, how much creative space they've given us to play in, and how much the fans have really just been a great like companion through the process.
That's awesome. And I love the aspect that you get to change up that element every single time, so it's never the same. And you get to see the Miami Hurricanes mascot and fighting against the Cavalier. That's awesome. Number three, I'm interested to hear the answer to this one. So this can go in a lot of different directions. The single content piece that took the most time to produce, and why it took so long.
Oh, so well, that's a good question. I think I would say the Chiefs Christmas Eve that we did with Tech Nine a few years ago was one that we were so excited about that we basically, Ian and I, my creative partner Ian, this is before Lexi was on board actually. We basically were like, we're just going to turn away every other client and we're going to spend like 2 months just working on this one thing
Wow.
because there's a lot of stuff we wanted to try out, new styles we wanted to try out. We wanted to really dig into the creative brief that we had set out and make sure we gave a lot of attention to every single scene of that thing. So it was basically him and me and our animator Stefan, all working on this one thing for about 2.5 months straight, without any distraction from other projects, which is something I've never given myself. Usually we have anywhere from 2 to 8 projects going on at the same time. And we dug in deep. We were very happy with the way it came out.
Yeah.
And I feel like more importantly, we took a step forward in the things that we could offer to clients because we gave it time so that we could learn some new tricks, basically.
Love that. No, that's great, and that's dedication, and I'm sure it was a fun time as well to be able to really throw your passion and not context switch all the time with different projects. That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And number four, tell me, looking at the 2Tall's owned accounts like YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, whatever, what's the most viral single piece of content on those accounts?
Oh, the single most viral single post.
Yeah, on one of 2Tall's accounts.
Yeah, it's funny. I would have thought that it would have been one we dropped during the playoffs, but I think I'd have to go back and look at the numbers. But I think the one that actually got the most views, and it was probably, I don't know, I want to say like 12 to 15 million across Instagram and TikTok, was when we introduced Wiggly Wemby. So our Wemby, so most of our guys are just like little guys doing dances. We did a complete different redesign on Wembanyama with like crazy long spaghetti arms and stuff like that, and had him coming down from flying saucer. That one I think we did in the late fall or something like that, and where we don't really normally drop a whole lot of those animations. But that one just was a huge hit with people, and I can't wait for the Spurs to make the playoffs so that we can actually bring Wiggly Wemby into our playoff
Yeah.
scenario because he's the only character we've done with that dance, and there's so much we could do with spaghetti arms.
That's awesome. I can picture in my head, and yeah, hopefully with Dylan Harper and getting healthier, and the Spurs will crack it this year. We'll see what happens with some Wiggly Wemby in the playoffs. Awesome. I have a question for you. This one I'm intrigued by. What does the software tech stack look like for you guys doing your work? Like, what are all the tools that you guys use to create this all these awesome animations?
We run so for our character animation, anything that looks kind of cartoony or vector, we do that all with Adobe Animate,
Mhm.
which is kind of old school. We've been using it for so long that we know all the tips and tricks, and we have a really great crew of people who work in Animate. We do cartoony stuff in Animate. For any of our more edgy stuff or stuff that is more art based and more like emotion illustration, with a lot of effects and things like that, we go with a Photoshop to After Effects workflow.
Mhm.
For the cartoony stuff, it's a Adobe Animate After Effects workflow. And for one single project, like we'll bring from all different directions, but compile everything in After Effects and do all of our effects and compositing there.
Super interesting. I love hearing that kind of stuff. Is someone who's really creative in software tools like that, or like, are you also a really good like physical artist? Or can I give you a pencil and you can also draw really well, or are those skills transferable?
So this is funny. Like so Ian has always drawn better than I have. So when I started Too Tall, I was like, we need lanes. So I haven't drawn much stuff for years because I was like, Ian's way better at that. I'm gonna have him do our art. I'm gonna do all the animatics and take care of animation and stuff like that. I used to draw like crazy. I was an art major in college, and I just kind of like once I farmed that out, I was like, well, I can grow. I can put all my effort into creating these other muscles,
Yeah.
creating the animatics, overseeing the animation, doing the timing, overseeing sound. I'm a huge proponent of very intentional sound design. Like it's so important to me that I oversee that really closely. So I watch over all that other stuff. If you put a pencil in my hand, I can still draw, but I'm not the best.
Yeah.
I feel that Ian is the one of the best out there, and I'm going to let him cook, and I'm going to put stuff together so that his art is as flattered as possible within the animation and the timing and the composition that I set out in the animatics and in the animation.
It's fascinating to learn about. I mean, just interacting with all the creatives that I know, and some are like really good at photography, some are really good at videography, and most people though they have that creative muscle, and you give them any medium, and they'll pick it up and somehow like become masters at it or become really creative, talented with it. It's a cool skill to have that clearly both you and Ian have in spades. Uh, Next question for you coming down the wire here, Greg Walter of Too Tall. If you were talking to someone who's just starting out their career or is in school right now, what would be your advice to them if they were aspiring to be creative? I know we've talked about that a little bit earlier. We talked about where the space is going with AI and all that as well. So if a student comes up to you today or someone who's just about to graduate and says, "I want to be a creative," what would you tell them?
So my daughter is a very good artist. She's a very creative person, very good writer, all those things. My advice to her as she's going and thinking about college and stuff like that is it in the future is not going, we alluded to this earlier. It's not going to be enough to be a craftsperson. You don't want to be the blacksmith out
Yeah,
there on the day that the factory opens up and everything's assembly line. Be a leader. Like you learn the craft, do all that stuff, but make sure you're not just a craftsperson. You need to see yourself as a creative director, a creative leader, or else your future is going to be really capped by what technology can do, and you can't control that. But if you think about creative ways to do everything you do, whether it's your summer job, it's just how you're composing a paper for school, anything like that, exercise those creative muscles to do something differently and expand whatever medium you're doing can do. So
yeah,
be up here in the pecking order, creative pecking order, not a ticket taker. You
totally.
can learn these, but be this, or else it's going to be a tricky road.
Yeah, tremendous advice. Like anyone, you can become a doer, but to be the person who comes up with what we're gonna do and why we're gonna do it and how we're gonna do it, like that takes a whole nother level of skill set, and that's gonna be a lot more valuable in the long term for sure. All right, Greg, it's time to ask our food question. Let's ask our food question. So tell me, I think you're based in Columbus these days. I'm not sure though. So tell me if I can hang out there in Columbus. Tell me the best meal to get and where we go to get it.
Oh, in Columbus, my house. My wife is an excellent cook. We're out in Granville, which is near Columbus. My favorite place to go in Granville, I'd say that is Three Tigers. It's a great place. It's like it's fusion kind of Vietnamese, uh, great beers, great food, great atmosphere. Makes me feel like I'm in Seattle, not small town Ohio. So that's my favorite place around here. Shout out
Very
Three Tigers.
nice. Some Vietnamese food in Columbus, Ohio. Who would have thought? Gotta love it.
Yeah.
Number nine, tell me, this is a fun one. Your favorite cartoon growing up, and if it's different, the animation that most inspired you growing up or coming up with.
We'll do the second one first.
Yeah.
Aha, Take On Me video changed my life. You know that one?
I can't picture in my head. I'm
Oh yeah, so
now.
so go back and look at it. I used to make flip books when I was a kid with like and with stick figures and stuff. Um, I was my entire young career, I was trying to figure out how they made that video and if I could ever do it someday. So I would try and make flip books in that same style, and I
Oh,
always failed. I didn't actually know it was rotoscope animation at the time. I didn't know it was traced animation. But like I saw that and have thought about that piece of art more probably in my life than anything else I've ever seen.
that's cool.
So send that up the ladder to aha. Uh, as far as the favorite growing up, that's a great question. Certainly Looney Tunes, man.
Yeah.
Chuck, anything by Chuck Jones. Um, big emotional response to old Peanut stuff. Um,
Go.
try, trying to think more along the way as I got on through my career, or like early Pixar, not
Yeah.
just for the visuals, but for the absolutely stunning and immaculate storytelling that they did,
Oh,
and Miyazaki uh, films, just absolutely amazing. It's not enough to just make it pretty. The stories that they tell, the timing, the surprise, all that stuff is just amazing in all of those.
what was that like when Toy Story came out and Pixar started and went on their hot run? Like, was it just like a complete mind-blowing thing for the world of creatives and animators being like, we didn't know this is possible.
Yeah, I wasn't even an animator when I saw Toy Story, but I actually remember coming out of the theater, and I don't remember shit anymore. But I remember that. I remember coming out and just being like, "What did I just see? How is this even possible?" Like, it did really legit feel like everything changed when I walked out of that theater.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And if
Yeah,
anyone's listening or watching and has not read or listened to I think it's Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull of Pixar, that's one of the best books you'll ever read about, creative culture and just having creativity.
I need to read that. I haven't read that.
That's great stuff. Ed Catmull, I think it's called Creativity Inc. But I'll link it up in the show notes perhaps, or let you know. All right, last one before you get out of here, Craig. Greg, tell me, do you get creative block? And if so, how do you combat it? Are there times where you're just like, I'm not sure what to do here. I need to take my mind off it or something. What's the key to getting out of creative block?
This is awesome because I just put a LinkedIn post out about this, so I've been thinking about it. The biggest thing you need to do is get the blank page is the worst enemy of any creative. You got to give yourself a fishbowl. Give yourself something to, you got to put your foot on something, and then you can pivot to the next thing. So the first thing you do is just get something on the page, something on the screen, whether it's like, if it's an animation, maybe you'd get your music first so you have some beats to go by. You need to like hang your stuff on some sort of a structure. So if you can get one thing in place,
Yeah.
that's a great place to start, even if it's not the final thing. I think of it like Michelangelo when he's chipping away at the stone. Chip away until you see a shoulder, and you're like, oh, that's the shoulder. So that means the hand must be over here, and you start chipping from that direction. When I do creative, I don't even consider myself that much of a creative. I consider myself I assemble and I find more than I create.
Yeah.
So like I'll find one thing. Like the animation's already done. It's like the animation's done. I just need to find what these scenes are. And when I find it, I'm like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
So find one thing. The other thing that I put in my LinkedIn post is my creative process always 25 years later incorporates a moment of absolute abject panic that I can't do it every single time. No matter what the project, I've got to like go through this imposter syndrome panic, and then I can get to work. So I need that panic. Then I need to go for a walk or take a shower or get something on the page. Going for walks, going for drives, taking showers, whatever gets your mind going to. Stepping away from the work is another thing that's important. So get one thing on the page, step away from the work to somewhere that engages your mind in a
Yeah.
different way, and give yourself the grace to go through the ugly part of your process. Mine is abject panic, but if there's something that happens to you every time and then it actually ends up working out in the end, respect that process and know that you'll get to the other end of that would be the other thing.
Great stuff. I second to all of that for sure. That's fantastic. Good way to end our Q&A. Now it's your chance, Greg, to take over the podcast and tell us your social media all-star to follow. It can be an account, or it can be a newsletter, podcast, blog, Instagram, YouTube, whatever. Just tell us who they are and why they're following.
I want to shout out four people for this because there are four people who really helped us out with the NBA playoffs this year. LNR underscore motion, Glitch Richmond, Lug Art, and NBA Paints. Look them all up on Instagram. They're all great follows. They do amazing work in the sports space, and they're amazing collaborators.
Definitely check them out. We'll link them up in the show notes for sure. And Greg, you mentioned we can find Too Tall. You guys just at Too Tall, and where can we find you as well?
At 2Tall Animation, one word.
Too Tall Animation, and
Yes.
you LinkedIn's best place to go for you.
LinkedIn is a great place to go for me. I love LinkedIn. I'm always on there.
Check them out. We learned a lot today. Greg, cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast, sharing us with us your wisdom, your knowledge, your expertise in the space, your creativity. I'm ready to try my hand at anything creative right now. I'm feeling more creative than I ever have, and really appreciate you guys spending some time with us today, Greg.
Thank you so much, man. This has been a delight, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Just great stuff. Being able to pick the brain of Greg Walter, owner and creative director for Too Tall Animation. Cannot thank him enough for coming on the podcast today, sharing his wisdom, his insight. Just so cool learning about the process, what goes into it, the huge opportunity there is with animation, and how they're pitching it, how teams are using it, how leagues are using it, and just a really interesting space to watch. That as we talked about, even as AI continues to build, the animation, the creatives are staying one step ahead and doing stuff that we can't do without them. So thanks a lot to Greg for coming on the podcast today and appreciate learning from him. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thank you for listening, downloading, watching, however you consume this podcast. As always, you can find every episode and more content at dsmsports.net. You can find the podcast and wherever you find your podcast, it'll be there. And you can find me, your host, Neil Horwitz, on Twitter, NJH287, also on LinkedIn. And I look forward to hearing you. I look forward to seeing you again for the next episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.